increase in the minimum wage. Let me bring in now Democratic Congresswoman Marcia Fudge of Ohio, who chairs the Congressional Black Caucus. Congresswoman, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So as we heard from Jay Carney, the president not planning to back down from his message that we saw at the beginning of this new year, where he is ready to bypass Congress where there is an option on some key things here. You've been very vocal, as has the Congressional Black Caucus, on, for example, minimum wage. We know a buzzword tomorrow night will be opportunity. Is that you need to hear from the president to go into the midterms with confidence?
Oh, absolutely. I really hope that the president on tomorrow night will articulate a vision, a clear path, a road map as to where he wants to lead this country. And I believe that the minimum wage has to be a part of that. It is not okay, Tamron, for people who work 40 hours a week to not be able to feed their families. So we have to deal with the minimum wage. And it's not okay for these big CEOs of these companies to make 500 and 600 and 700 times what the people make that do their products. So I think it has to be addressed, and I hope he will address it.
One of the concerns, at least our first read team notes, that the White House is fearful of the next day. The headline after the State of the Union is that the president pursued a modest agenda as opposed to something forceful, facing off against issues of immigration and, as you mentioned as well, income inequality. What are your concerns? What is the message, I guess, you and other members of Congress saying to the president behind the scenes that you can share with us?
Well, one of the things that I think the president is, if nothing else, is a realist. He understands that issues like immigration reform have to come through the House of Representatives. I do, in fact, encourage him to use the ability he has to use executive power to make some things happen, but some things must go through Congress. And because he understands that, he knows that there are ways that he has to work within the halls of Congress, and I am more than willing to be a participant in trying to move some of his agenda. But I mean, there's only so much he can really do.
So you're going in with, you say, a realistic view, but we also know the clock is ticking, and some of the things the president said were a top priority. For example, gun legislation. When faced with hoping that Republicans would come on board with what many saw as common sense legislation, that died. Immigration is stalled, despite some Republicans saying that it is necessary. So there is a realistic view, but have to be worried as well that this will just stall out, and it eventually his term will become the car that may be in the fast lane but not moving.
Well, you know, I agree to some degree, Tamron, but as I said in the beginning, he needs to articulate a way forward, and that is going to include talking about gun control. It certainly will include talking about immigration reform. It will be important for him to talk about the poverty in this country, about hunger, about education, so many things that we need to address. But again, there's only so much he can do alone. But I do hope he will take whatever opportunity he has to make this country better if the Congress doesn't participate.
And that list of things you named just quickly, though, certainly are all things the president has talked about in the past. As the White House is saying, this is now, though, the time for action.
Well, I agree that it is the time for action, but what we need to do is to convince our colleagues that whether you are Republican or Democrat, we all have the same job. And that is to move America forward. That is not to want a president to fail. That is not to want a policy to fail. It is to take care of the people who sent us here, the people we represent. And so I think that if people start being serious about their jobs, we will get some things done. But if not, we will continue the same gridlock we've had ever since this president has been in office.
It's always great to have you on and your voice in the conversation. Thank you so much for your time.